With the FNAF movie coming out in less than a month, I realized that my father knows next to nothing about the franchise other than Robot Bear Bad, dead kids, and some dude got crushed inside a bunny suit and got really yucky. So I decided to make this video, which tells you everything you should know before seeing the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. This video is really only going to go into the first 4 games lore because that's the general length of what we know the film to cover, and also I don't want this to be 8 hours long. Now, even with the lore we have here, it's a bit hefty, but don't worry, it's okay, because if you just stick around and you really focus in, I promise you're gonna understand it. And also, if you hit this thing right here, look at that, you should click that's down there. You should do that. But yes, buckle up, clench your cheeks, because we're gonna go learn about some dead kids. So first things first, what exactly is Freddy's? Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is a kids pizzeria and show place initially founded by 2 guys, Henry Emily and William Afton. Originally called Fredbear's Family Diner, it featured just 2 animatronics, a yellow bear named Fredbear and a yellow rabbit named Bonnie, who we know as Spring Bonnie, which let me explain real quick. See, these animatronics doubled as both robot performers and mascot costumes for employees to wear at the same time. And these mechanics inside it that allowed it to switch were called spring locks. It would lock the pieces in place, and then, you know, there was a crank that you could use to do that, and then it would spring the pieces back into place when you need them to be just a robot. So it's kind of interesting, and that's the spring part of Spring Bonnie's name. So from what we know, the franchise grew and eventually new characters were added alongside these yellow stars. Freddy Fazbear, Bonnie the Bunny, Chica the Chicken, and Foxy the Pirate. Unfortunately, as time passed, there were some incidents. William Afton's son, known by the community as Evan, was killed in the bite of 83, where his brother, Michael, stuffed his head into Fredbear's mouth, and since Evan was crying, his tears kind of weakened the springs in Fredbear's suit, and, you know. At the same time, Afton himself was, well, let's just say he was on a bit of a murder spree. He used the Spring Bonnie suit to lure children to the back room of the restaurant, which was a room with no cameras, and that's where he would do his unfortunate work. Afton's first kill, however, is believed to be his own business partner's daughter, Charlie. After the death of his own son, it's believed that he wanted Henry to suffer too, so one cold, rainy night, after getting Charlie outside alone, he left her in the alley, lifeless. Henry's security puppet, designed to protect Charlie, eventually made it to her body, and it ended up collapsing in the rain. She then goes on to possess this puppet, and things get really weird and crazy from here, but we'll get to that in just a sec. Afton did this a lot. Throughout the games, we see at least a baker's dozen of kids go missing from the locations. Eventually, the yellow suits are condemned, and employees are no longer allowed to go anywhere near them. Leave them in that back room. Don't do it. The company rebrands into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and stars Freddy as the new attraction. But even with this new rebrand, Afton still insists on using his suit to do his nasty work. Eventually, he is arrested, but never actually convicted. His tactic was to stuff the bodies into the suits in order to hide them. While that was a decent idea, people did notice the blood and the stench and all the gross stuff coming out of the animatronics, and there were a lot of health concerns raised. And that ended up getting Freddy's closed down. A couple years later, 1987, Freddy's had a grand reopening featuring newer toy animatronics and using the old ones for spare parts. There is also an addition of the puppet, or the marionette. It's kind of interchangeable, but it's the same puppet that Charlie possesses. Once again, Afton makes his way in to do what he does best, but this time things are different. The animatronics are acting strange. They interact with the kids just fine, but they stare weirdly at adults. It turns out these animatronics were given life, as we see in a minigame from FNAF 2. The puppet, Charlie, gives the latest victims new life inside the animatronics themselves. Eventually, they begin to act so strange, another incident occurs.
The bite of 87?
More investigations are done, the newly reopened Freddy's is closed down once more, and Afton makes note of this strange behavior and decides to dig a bit deeper. Finally, many years later, somewhere in the early 90s, is where the first game takes place. That's right, everything else we've talked about so far has been from prequels to the first game. We play as Mike Schmidt, a security guard that is hired to watch over a pretty rundown Freddy's restaurant. And this is actually the same restaurant from before the reopening, where now there are plans to completely reset the company once again with the old characters. Now, remember what I said about Afton digging deeper and that secret back room with no cameras that I mentioned? Afton spent his time dismantling the animatronics there to study the supernatural state. Because, like, that's weird that they're acting so strange, only after he's killed people and put them inside them. Little did he know that as he dismantled the suits, he was setting their spirits free at the same time. He's eventually cornered by all the spirits of his victims, and in a desperate attempt of intimidation, he puts on his trusty spring-lock suit to scare the spirits away. But, not paying attention to the environment around him, the roof was leaking. The water dripped into his suit, causing the mechanisms to snap loose, and he got crushed inside the suit. He drops to the floor, blood oozing everywhere around and inside him, metal replacing what once was his body. And that, I think, is the basic story of what we'll see in the FNAF movie. Now, obviously, from the trailers, the film doesn't seem to do any backstory of the company itself, so it'll most likely be more of the Afton experimentation and Mike Schmidt's experiences during his shifts combined into a more understandable and achievable film for a general audience. So it's probably similar to more how the Silver Eyes book focused on Charlie, the backstory of the pizzeria, and then Afton's reveal and eventual death. If you're new to the franchise, be prepared to see a lot of dead characters.
Always come back.
I thought this was a decent explanation of the story without going too in-depth with actual information. I plan on doing a lot more lore breakdowns in the future, so if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. I also do a bunch of gaming videos, not just on FNAF, but on a bunch of things and animations. I do a lot of stuff. You should subscribe. But in the meantime, I hope you all stay safe, have fun at the movie, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!